email.
Absolutely, we're very happy to. I'm sorry, this is disgusting.
Okay, okay.
This is the dust of the French Republic. My Spanish is worse. My English, though.
Yes.
Put under the shirt.
Yep.
Possible.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I have to look.
Oh, thank you very, very much. And we have to see each other again.
Yes.
And if not, May. The month of May is the big day.
Yes. Okay, so see you later.
Thank you. God bless you.
Okay.
You want to open this? Or?
No.
You sure?
I think you are very used to
A lot of experience.
Yeah. It's okay. You can sit here. Just here. So yes, I think it's just the beginning of a story about the worker in the Green Vicini. So I need to make an interview in general about what you are doing in the island and how the workers are living and what is the problem. And I think that the production maybe contact you by email to make some bigger footage with you to show how you are living now and what you are doing for keep the fight on. The fight on, correct?
Fight.
The fight. Can you say some words for me?
Yes. Can you hear me okay?
Oh, okay. What is your life now since during the mission?
I arrived in the Dominican Republic in September of 1997, and so I spent approximately 3 years living and working in the eastern part of the island, in the province of San Pedro de Macorís, in the municipality and parish of San José de los Llanos. That parish is comprised approximately of 60 bateys. The batey is like a small hamlet, a little village dispersed within the sugarcane fields where the Haitian migrant workers and their families reside in the context of the sugar industry.
But just since October, I think you quit.
Yes.
So, what is your feeling that you quit the mission? How do you feel right now that you quit?
Obviously, my departure was a tremendous moment of pain and deep grief and suffering, a sense of loss, separation from people I loved, who had a tremendous influence, importance, impact in my life. I'm at home at the present time with my parents, and I've been given a kind of a sabbatical year as my father is in very poor health. So it's an opportunity to spend some time with my parents, which I had not done for this length of time in the past 22 years of my life as a missionary.
For you, it's
nevertheless,
very hard.
It's a tremendous pain, a very deep sense of suffering and of loss. I do have to admit that in my last maybe 5 to 6 months before my unexpected departure, I did have the feeling that, in a sense, my mission was complete. The fact that my mission was complete does not mean that everything that we were striving for had been accomplished. But in a sense, I had the impression that I had initiated something that not necessarily it was for me to see it come in the trench to its completion, that there are now today maybe other actors, other institutions, organizations, other people committed as much or more than myself in this cause, who now have the responsibility to see this struggle and the plight of the Haitian migrant workers come to its fulfillment and to its solving the situation. There are other people who remain there and with whom I am in very close contact, telephone, email, and other means of communication, and with whom I continue to work, to advise, and to be in contact with. Furthermore, I think it is providential that I was asked to leave, because if I were still today the parish priest of San Jose de los Llanos, I would not be able to be sitting in front of this camera this morning. And maybe now there is a mission much more at the international scope, through the media, speaking to other institutions, that can pressure the Dominican government and can bring the plight of the migrant workers and their families to the international court, and also to the international court of public opinion, which is many times where these victories are won. Because I am absolutely convinced that it is only through international pressure that the Dominican government in turn will force the sugar industry to improve its human rights and labor rights record.
And why the church asked you to leave the Republic Dominican?
I think in very few words, because the church could not take the pressure from the government and the sugar industry. Constant pressure through the media, threats, etc. I am sure that I will never know all the details, but quite frankly, I'm not even interested. I know that way above whatever the church has decided with my faith, I believe that the finger of God brought me there without knowing on my part what I was getting into, and it was only God who decided that my time was up. I always tell myself that Moses didn't see the people of Israel into the promised land. Moses had his part in accompanying the people through a very painful desert, but then it had to be Joshua who led the people into the promised land. We each have a part to play, and you have to know when it begins and when it ends, or when it should continue, but in a different form.
What was your reaction when they asked you to leave the Republic Dominican?
I had great pain in my heart, but a great spirit of obedience. I packed my bags.
How was they told you you have to quit now?
The Bishop of San Pedro de Macorís came to my residence and asked me to leave in 15 days, and I was gone within a week.
And what was your reaction?
Of silence and of obedience. I made a promise of obedience on the day I was ordained a priest, and I have never disobeyed the church. I am at her service, even when I don't understand.
But
it is not for me to judge, and it's not for me to condemn.
And how the worker react about that?
With great sorrow and with great sadness in their hearts. But they are people of faith, and that they know that Father came and was with them for a time of their lives. They know that maybe Father is gone now, but they believe very deep in their hearts that God doesn't abandon the poor, and that God never abandons his little people.
But now who take care of them?
There are a team of lawyers, volunteers, and other men and women very actively committed in bringing about and continuing, especially all the legal activity. It's very interesting to realize that I was a little bit of a bridge between a team of lawyers and the workers. But now the work that remains is so technical that it really has to be done by people who are experts in the field, especially in the field of labor rights and basic human rights, which is not the expertise of a priest. I think my mission was to give protection to the lawyers who came to assist the workers and to introduce the lawyers to the workers. But now that connection is made, and given all the publicity, it would be absolutely impossible for anybody to forbid these lawyers from entering. So I think the connection is already made and the work is ongoing. But as I say now, it remains on a very technical field. For example, a work contract. I mean, who decides what clauses should be included in the work contract? It's not a priest, it's a lawyer.
So even without you, the fight it's going, it keeps going,
absolutely,
and workers are not alone.
Absolutely, and not only that, in a sense, has been a blessing in disguise that I were not there, because it was the only way for us to figure out if, when Father was gone, when I was gone, if everything would go back to its original state. And I am the first one to be very surprised that all our accomplishments, all our achievements are still in place, and that nothing has been reversed just because I was not there. Whilst the industry, in its fury and its anger against me, used to always say, things are the way they are because the priest is there, but just you wait for the priest to go. Well, the priest went, but now the workers would not tolerate the abuse that they used to experience in the past. There's a very good American expression that says, you cannot put the paste back in the tube once you squeeze. These changes in the minds of the workers are irreversible, and the industry knows it. With the help of the media, with all the different forms of media, which keep up the pressure, it is impossible today for the sugar industry to get away with the abuse with which they treated the workers. What I think is going to happen, though, is because it's so difficult for them to now bring all these 25,000, 30,000 men across the Haitian-Dominican border, I believe that the future of the sugar industry is the mechanization, bringing machines to do the work of people, which is a sign of progress.
So, let's talk about the worker. So, first question, how do they live in the field? Can you explain that?
The workers reside in what we call barracks. They are crammed into very small areas, filthy dirty, with no ventilation, sleeping on double bunks. The company provides them with a machete and with a gallon of water. Those are the instruments at the beginning of the harvest season which are provided to the worker for him to be able to go out every morning into the sugarcane field. Normally, the day begins at around 4 o'clock in the morning, and they walk out when it's still dark, wherever the sugarcane field work is to be initiated in that particular morning. And they begin to harvest the sugarcane non-stop till approximately 6 o'clock in the afternoon.
Like slavery?
It's absolutely like slavery. First of all, because they're not paid in money, they're paid in vouchers, which can only be redeemed at the company store. They have no insurance policy, no work contract. There is active child labor, because the children sow the sugarcane fields 25 cents on the dollar per furrow. They can do 3 or 4 furrows a day. They're only paid about €1 per ton of sugarcane harvested. And the maximum that a very good, hard-working Haitian could make would be up to nearly 2 tons a day, from 1 to 2 tons a day, which is really exploitation of the workers. They have no legal status, no immigration papers. Their children are denied their birthright when the Dominican Constitution says that any child born in the Dominican Republic, Articles 8 and 11 of the Dominican Constitution says that every child born in the Dominican Republic is a Dominican. The Dominican government makes always an exception with children born by Haitian parents.
And how do you explain that some slaves still exist in this country? Why?
So slavery can only perpetuate itself for 2 reasons. First, because ignorance. This was very conveniently hidden from the public eye. I believe when Dominicans say that they had no idea of what was going on in the sugarcane fields. Because if you never had to go to a sugarcane field, you would never know of any of this. And it was forbidden for most people to enter the sugarcane fields to begin with. When I arrived in my parish, the first thing I was told that it is forbidden for you to enter the Vicini plantations. So the first thing I did was defy that prohibition, but it took me 3 months to muster the courage to enter those plantations, even at the danger of getting shot, because I was in fact entering private property.
And what have you discovered when you go in the plantation?
Well, I've discovered the living and working, the very horrible living and working conditions of these migrant workers and of their families.
And what was your reaction?
First of all, my reaction was absolutely of horror. I was overwhelmed by the situation. It really took me 3 years to understand the basics of the problem and the root causes and to do something about it.
Why?
But in a sense, I was actually forced into action. I'm not saying against my will, but in a very unexpected fashion. The President of the Republic came to one of my batees just by sheer coincidence for some political rally in a batee called Batee Gautier on January 28th of the year 2000. And I was invited as one of the little local authorities, as the priest is in many Latin American countries, to give a little blessing and invocation, basically to say that God loves the President and is very happy with what the President is doing. I, of course, took it as a manipulation of the role and the presence of the priest and the church. But I was advised by our lawyer to go and to participate in this activity because, who knows, there could have been the opportunity of saying something to the President and giving voice to those who have no voice. So what was supposed to be a very brief, simple blessing, I typed out into a 5-page speech, which began with this, with the opening statement was, Mr. President, whether you realize it or not, you have come to the threshold of hell. Allow me to briefly describe for you what this hell consisted of. The next morning, this was reported on the front page of every Dominican newspaper. Priest to President, you have come to the threshold of hell. And there was a paid ad in the press, in the Dominican press, in all the Dominican newspapers, paid by the Vicini family, because I had mentioned, in my own ignorance, because I didn't know that you could not mention in public